Wonderful song. Thank you so much. Well, thank you all for being here this morning. We've kind of declared this World That Works for Everyone Day because we have started off with Interfaith Sunday this morning. This is something that is new in the movement. There are many other centers for spiritual living around the country and up in Canada, and maybe even around the world, that are also observing this today. So it's a wonderful new thing that we have begun. And then, of course, we have our Parliament of World Religions event, and tonight our Season for Nonviolence event. So it's a wonderful day for a world that works for everyone. And I'm so grateful that Nicole read the Global Heart Vision this morning, because for some of you who are new, you may never have heard it before. It was created many years ago in the 1990s by a group of leaders from the New Thought movement who felt that it was really time for us to look again at our vision and our mission and really determine what it is we're here to do. Why are we doing what we do? And after many hours of visioning and sharing and brainstorming and wordsmithing, they came up with that beautiful, beautiful document called the Global Heart Vision. You can always find that on the website for Association for Global New Thought. It's right there. This morning, as Reverend Josh said, we have a wonderful group of amazing people. I really want to tell you that it's like I'm just so proud to be able to share my friends with you, because these people have been dear friends of mine for a long time. And I will be introducing them all to you in just a moment. But I want to just say this, that the work that we do in the world of interfaith, interreligious dialogue and understanding is, I believe, the work that is key to, if we ever have peace on this planet, this is the work that is key to that peace. Because it's with this understanding and awareness that we can grow to realize that we are all created by the same God, as Scripture says, created in the image and likeness of the One, that we all live under the same sun, we all are drinking the same water and breathing the same air and living on the same planet. And we may come in all kinds of different colors and cultures and customs and languages and religious beliefs and foods, cuisines, those are the best part, in my opinion. And, but we're part of the same human family. And so we're here today to really share about that, to learn about each other, to break down maybe a few little sensitivities that some of you may have out there about those people versus us. As long as we continue to believe there is a they, we cannot really ever understand that it's really all that we are. We are all one. And so I'm just so delighted to introduce my guests today. And I'm going to be introducing them in reverse order from the first service. Because our first guest that's going to be speaking this morning is an absolutely beautiful breath of fresh air young woman who is the daughter of a very good friend of mine, Maria Kani. Maria is also an amazing person. She was at the table with President Obama and Joe Biden at the White House just a few weeks ago on that table on terrorism. Maria was one of the people that was blocking. She does a lot of work with educating youth, and she and Danya are going to have to leave early because they're going to an Interfaith Youth Conference this morning as well. And her daughter, Danya, is one of the kids that I've watched grow up, turning into an amazing person, just like our Reverend Josh. I consider her one of my children, and I just love her dearly. So I want to tell you about Danya. She will be our first speaker. Danya Al-Khuli was born in Santa Monica and resided in LA before moving to Orange County. Since the age of 13, she's been expressing her emotions through writing. At the age of 19, after graduating from Cal State University Long Beach at 19 with a bachelor's degree in sociology, she published her first book called 91 at 19, which is a collection of 91 of her favorite poems that she had written up until the age of 19. And I want to tell you, some of the poems are just really, they tug right at your heart. Returning back to Cal State Long Beach 1 year later, Danya obtained her master's degree in public policy and administration. Along with her efforts as a writer and a blogger and a poet, Danya continues her various activities alongside her full-time job as a corporate manager of patient experience for a chain of hospitals. She has worked with the LA Sheriff's Department, different nonprofit organizations, local mosques, as well as many interfaith activities and groups. And Danya and her mother founded the group Syrian American Mothers with the help of a small group of Arab American women in Southern California. Danya's family, Maria's parents, live in Damascus. Her father is a retired diplomat, and they really need our prayers right now. Her parents are elderly, and they need our prayers. So please keep them in your prayers. This organization hosts rotating educational and cultural exhibitions that display the arts and crafts and history of Syria. We had a Syrian exhibit here a couple of years ago that Maria and Danya and these women put on. Danya is currently putting the finishing touches on a memoir she hopes will be published toward the end of this year or early next year. So please welcome Danya Al-Khoury.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. So today's focus is on how we affirm faith and peace, and how our faith traditions affirm peace as well. And I answered both questions in a speech that I'll be reading to you on a personal story I wanted to share. So I've been attending interfaith events since a little after the time my family moved to Orange County, which only strengthened the roots of my growth. So when I was asked to be a speaker rather than an audience member, I was honored, because usually it's my mom behind the podium, but I've unconsciously followed her footsteps, except I wear different shoes. Every event that I've been to has been wonderful, circulating around the messages of peace that our faiths offer. The thing is, I think we all know and understand these elements of our faith. We all know that God is love and that religions only call for peace. The underlying issue, however, is sustaining the implementation of that peace, affirming that peace. So why isn't that happening? In my opinion, I think the problem is foundational. Many people today lack something very dire, and that is true internal happiness, which directly relates to the internal and external peace in the world. There's this notion that religion is burdensome and something to practice later in life, or when a calamity strikes. In chapter 20 of the Quran, verse 2, God states that He did not reveal the Quran upon us so that we may be burdened, but rather it is these words from our holy books that are a call for us to find that internal peace and freedom. Somehow, though, they're misunderstood. Our job, as those who remember this call, is to remind others. God says in chapter 87, verse 9, "So do remind, for surely reminding does benefit." However, there's another issue that arises here, and that's that sometimes that this inner turmoil one faces can often be overlooked. Something else that's repeated very often in the Quran that I truly love and actually implement in my writing is give them an example. So let me share with you an allegory to clarify what I'm referring to with regards to this overlooking the loss of peace. 7 months ago, I got married. 7 days later, I separated from my husband on the honeymoon and filed for divorce 2 months after. Even as a writer, I'm still at loss for words about how this experience can impact the soul's faith and peace. When people talk about affirming peace and ending violence, everyone's mind shifts to the distance. Poverty, hunger in the Middle East, shootings, unjust actions, political things. People often forget what's right in front of us. And that's the key to establishing the proper foundation of peace. My mother always taught me that we are like pebbles thrown into a river. Our focus is to look at that first ripple round circle that's made around the pebble, and that's what we stabilize. And once that's done, we can move on to the next ripple, and the next, and the next. So our main focus is immediately here, and then we spread our peace and faith afterwards. Also in the Quran, chapter 8, verse 53, God says, He does not change a status He has placed people in until they change what is within themselves. So therefore, to affirm my faith and peace, I must start with myself. And after what I went through, and I'm still going through, sometimes it's been a challenge. However, God has sent me little nudges here and there. A week after my separation, I started a new job. It was definitely difficult timing, but one of the most amazing things that has kept my faith and sanity in life is the concept of divine destiny. It is one of the pillars of faith in Islam that reaffirms my stability, that ability to surrender to the will of God and know that what He has planned is what will happen when it's supposed to happen because He said so. This is one of the biggest reaffirmations of faith and peace. It gives an individual that peace of mind and peace of soul. You live and trust in God. 2 weeks after starting this job, I was sent to a conference that focused on compassionate healthcare. I was hired as the manager of patient experience to oversee the quality of patient satisfaction in the care of over 30 hospitals. But back then, I was beyond disoriented. Newlywed, newly separated, newly employed, new to healthcare, and just transitioned over from law enforcement and events management. I needed to catch my breath, and so I found myself gravitating towards every session being hosted on personal betterment and leadership development. It was there that I found God, because to be honest, in those almost 2 years, I temporarily lost Him, therefore losing faith and completely losing peace. And when one is under those circumstances, he or she is no longer a productive individual or a beneficial, peaceful resource to the world. That is why we see what we see going on today in the world with increased violence and abuse. These people lack that upbringing and that environment that thoroughly develops inner peace and faith. I met a speaker that left me in awe until this very moment, and though he will never know, I am utterly grateful to him for injecting me with the awakening I needed to return back to who I was. He is a psychologist who graduated from Harvard and currently works with the school to do research on human happiness. What struck me about his words is the fact that they so clearly mirrored what Islam had called upon me far before meeting him. He said that the two key elements to human happiness are an attitude of gratitude and living for a purpose greater than oneself. If those two don't scream faith and peace, I don't know what else can. In chapter 34, verse 13, God says, "Do thanks, O family of David, and very few of my servants are thankful." Thanks to my in-house tutor, Mom. I've heard that verse repeated very often, and there are two things that I take away from that. First, God reminds us that often humans forget to be thankful and grateful, and that's something we need to always work on and remind ourselves. Second, God is requesting us to do thankfulness. But how do you do thankfulness? In the world that we live in today, the concept of thankfulness is simply smiling and saying thank you. But here we can see that God is illustrating to us a more in-depth representation of true gratitude and thankfulness. These two are not mere words that we offer, they are actions that we implement. In Islam, being grateful or thankful means using what one is blessed with in the right way to serve others for the sake of God. If I'm given health, I take care of myself to care for others. If I'm given money, I spend wisely, save wisely, and give to others in need. If I'm given time or freedom, I appreciate those and am resourceful with each one. Now, the speaker's second point, living for a purpose greater than oneself, I fell in love heavily with that. And in my opinion, this is what gives birth to true happiness. And it may even be stronger than the element that he first mentioned was the cause of happiness. Because this is what gives you the opportunity to discover what you should be grateful for and how to utilize those blessings. For me, healing started the first time I gave a donation after returning to the path of singlehood. I felt something I hadn't felt in a really long time. I felt valuable, important, and honored to have received such kindness from the stranger that I helped. To affirm faith and peace, we need to live for God through serving others. It instills the right kind of selfishness, as strange as that is to say, that builds love, kindness, and then ripple effects into peace. Charity is another one of the pillars of Islam, and it doesn't always only mean financially. Charity in Islam is as simple but as powerful as a smile. When I was a child, I dreamed of marriage, not weddings, marriage. And one of the biggest dreams I had was starting a humanitarian project with my husband, whoever that would be. That dream didn't come true yet, but in the meantime, I want to live that dream, even if on my own, because I am living for God. I am living for a purpose far beyond myself, and that brings me peace. therefore giving me the energy and drive to promote faith and peace with those around me. Just a week after my divorce became public, a very dear Christian Syrian friend of mine sent me a phenomenally powerful message. She said that sometimes what steers us the farthest from the path of God, the path we are destined to walk, needs to be filtered out of our lives. She was right. I had never deviated farther away from the path of peace and faith than I had in these 2 years. I had become someone less productive, less pleasant, and less peaceful, which hindered my ability to promote faith and peace in the world. It hindered my ability to live in the way God has destined for me, and I didn't like it. So finding myself back on track was a relief. I was once again beginning to not only see, but feel the light of faith and peace. And that was inspiring because I knew that it meant I would be able to do thankfulness and gratitude again. It meant I would be able to live for a greater purpose and serve God as a better Muslim. So how does Islam affirm peace? Islam affirms peace like any other faith, calling its followers to be happy individuals who live gratitude and live with purpose to serve humanity. And how do I affirm peace? I continuously work harder on myself, even if I am human and fall. I pick myself back up and remember what God wants of me. He reminds me every day when I wake up and realize it's another day to live. He reminds me every day when I find myself free from the troubles of the days before. He reminds me every day when I look in the mirror and wrap my scarf around my head. Because being a Muslim literally and linguistically means being an individual who submits to God's demand for peace. I will continue to wear this emblem of affirmation on my head and in my heart. And this is the kind of affirmation we need to reintroduce into our humanity today. Thank you.
I think you can agree with me that our future is in very good hands. Very good hands. Yes. Oh, thank you, Maria. Thank you. Thank you. They have to leave to go to another interfaith conference for youth, for young people. I think it's so important to hear authentic voices of Islam instead of what you hear in the press. It is not what you hear in the press. That is not Islam any more than Ku Klux Klan is Christianity. Okay? It is not. And they will be the first to tell you that. I am so proud to know so many wonderful people of so many different great traditions. And today, you see, we're focusing on the Abrahamic traditions. I'm hoping that the next time we do this, we'll have 3 other teachings that will be here so that we can also learn from them. But right now I want to introduce another dear friend of mine, and that is Charlie Niederman. You get to still stay in the middle because I'm going reverse, so I'm still the middle guy. Were you the second-born child too, or just firstborn like me? I've known Charlie a long time. Charlie is currently the president of the Greater Huntington Beach Interfaith Council. Father Christian, Charlie, and I, all 3 are veterans of serving as presidents of the council at different times. Charlie grew up back east in Connecticut and joined the Coast Guard, became an officer in the Coast Guard, and served the Coast Guard for 28 years. Spent a lot of time at Groton Long Point, right, in Connecticut, which is close to where some of my family lives. Charlie later on became involved in management and worked with Orange County for a while. But Charlie's passion is interfaith work. Charlie has made 11 trips to Israel, interfaith trips, as well as going to work on the ground in some of the Arab villages in the Galilee area, where there is still a lot of work to be done, a lot of healing work, and a lot of reaching across lines that need to be opened up. And I just hugely admire his work. I had a chance to meet some of the people that Charlie has worked with when I was in Israel on a similar kind of trip. And I know that the work that he does is really important work. He has served as our president these last couple of years for the Interfaith Council. He's the organizer every year of our Huntington Beach 4th of July Interfaith Council Parade Float, which is one of our fun things that we do. And he is just a really dear friend. Oh, not only that, he and his wife bicycle through Europe. They don't just, take the train or the bus. They bicycle through Europe. So I would like you to meet Charlie Niederman from Temple Beth David and the Greater Huntington Beach Interfaith Council. The two questions are, how do you affirm your faith out into the world, and what does your religion teach about nonviolence and peace?
Thank you, Reverend Faith. Good morning.
Good morning.
This is, I think, the third time I've been here, but those times were in the evening, so I haven't been able to sit and admire your window, which is so appropriate for our topics today about peace. I'd like to tell you something about how Jews affirm their faith in the world. As Jews, we affirm our faith foremost in the affirmation of the oneness of God. We have to realize that Judaism started between 3,000 and 4,000 years ago, at a time when that was definitely a minority view. In the Jewish prayer service, the declaration of faith plays an important part, and many Jewish martyrs over the centuries used it as their dying declaration. The declaration in Hebrew is Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kivod, Malchut Ho, Leolam Va'ed. Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Blessed is God's glorious majesty forever and ever. The other important affirmation is a belief in the covenantal relationship with Adonai. The first covenant is between God and Noah. It predates Judaism. Noah is described in Genesis as a righteous man, blameless in his age. Noah walked with God. Blameless in his age is a little bit qualifying, since in our age it might have been different. But that's how Noah is described, and how he was selected, of course, to build the ark. The covenant that God made with Noah after the flood is marked by the rainbow. It's made with the children of Noah, and by extension, it's made with all of us. Tradition understands the demands of that covenant to consist of 7 commandments, the essential universal morality. They're the prohibition of murder, idolatry, theft, incest, blasphemy, the dismembering of living animals, and the command to establish courts of justice. One who lives in accordance with these demands of this Noahide covenant is perceived as righteous and merits the world to come. The next covenant, Abraham himself is told to be a blessing, and that through him his seed and all nations on the earth shall be blessed. The covenant with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and their descendants is ratified in Exodus at Sinai. It's ratified with the children of Israel as a whole, who are called to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. The mandate to sanctify God's name is perceived within biblical tradition in 2 ways. First, through the existence of the children of Israel in history as a testimony to the divine presence, and also by the sanctification of the people by following the commandments, including the commandment to be a light to illumine the world. Thus, the ultimate goal of the Jewish people is to serve by living in accordance with the divine will, in justice, righteousness, and peace. This is to live the messianic ideal. Jews are taught that there is no peace without justice, and no justice without peace. In regard to peace and nonviolence, the Hebrew word for peace is shalom. The root for the word, in fact, is shlamut, which denotes a sense of completion or perfection. In fact, in the Bible, shalom means being well prepared, or means prosperity, not just peace. Thus, in Judaism, peace is not only the opposite of war, it's an ideal state of affairs. In this sense, peace, perfection, is something that will not be totally achieved until the Messianic era. At that time, nations shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. This is part of the general societal harmony and perfection. All men shall sit under their vine and fig tree, and none shall make them afraid. The fact that true peace is a dream does not mean that it's not a Jewish value in the here and now. In the Talmud, which is the commentary on the Bible, peace is one of the most esteemed values. Peace is so important that when God chooses to bless the Jews, he blesses them with peace. In biblical commentary, three things preserve the world: truth, justice, and peace. The pursuit of peace and good for all is thus a supreme obligation for the covenantal Jewish people. It is the goal of the Messianic ideal, and of course the value of peace is by no means an aspiration exclusively to Jews. It's a universal ideal. The biblical commentaries say that the whole Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, itself is for the sake of the ways of peace. The Torah's ways are ways of pleasantness, and all its paths are peace. God is good to all, and his mercies extend to all his creatures. Precisely, therefore, says the 11th century scholar Maimonides, that Jews must behave accordingly if they are to live up to their covenant with God. Perhaps nothing exhibits the importance of peace more than the fact that almost every major Jewish prayer, the Amidah, which is the central prayer and a standing prayer in all Jewish services, the Kaddish, which is a prayer for the dead, the priestly benediction, which is given during life cycle events, and the grace after meal, they all conclude with an appeal for peace. While Judaism is the particular way of life of a particular people born out of a particular historical experience, those purposes and aspirations are universal. It's said of Rabbi Hillel in the 1st century before the Common Era that he was approached by a non-Jew who said he'd convert to Judaism if Hillel could tell him the meaning of Torah while standing on one leg. Rabbi Hillel replied, "Do not do to your neighbor that which you do not wish done to you. All the rest is commentary. Go and study."
Okay, let's see. Thank you so much, Charlie. Thank you. And finally, my friend, Father Christian Mondor, whom I've known for almost 20 years, Father Christian and I and Rabbi Steve Einstein were 3 of the clergy who were founding members of the Interfaith Council many years ago. We're about to celebrate our 20th anniversary coming up next year. You always say this, so I'm going to share it. Father Christian Mondor, he said, if it were translated into a Jewish name, would be Goldberg. So he's really Father Christian Goldberg from Church of St. Simon and Jude Catholic Church in Huntington Beach. Father Christian has been a Franciscan for the last 70 years, and in the priesthood for 64 of those 70 years, and he is still going strong. I know a lot of things about this wonderful man, and there's a lot about his education. He's so well educated. He's got a couple of master's degrees and a doctorate from University of Portland. He has taught. He has just done amazing, amazing things. He's also been one of our recipients of the Peacemaker Award with the Interfaith Council. We share that in common as well. He, every year for the last 7 years, has been very instrumental in something called the Blessing of the Waves, which we do in Huntington Beach once a year. It attracts about 3,000 people, and it's just a beautiful ceremony. And he will go out to do a paddle out on his surfboard that has a painting of Our Lady of Guadalupe on it. It's a beautiful board, and she goes with him out there riding the waves. One of his distinctions is that he won a gold medal in the men's senior Olympic swimming competition several years ago, when he was just a young guy of about 80-something. And he also plays the banjo, and he's played the banjo all over the place, but he and Kona Dawn get together once a year for the Interfaith Thanksgiving service, and they do a banjo ukulele duo together. So one of my dearest friends, please welcome Father Christian Mondor.
Thank you, Reverend Peggy. I'm delighted to be here because I think it's through the Interfaith Council and people like yourselves that I've come to learn a lot about my own faith. The two questions we were asked, before we start, just a little about the strange garb that I'm wearing. This is our official garb that I'm a Franciscan priest, following the little poor man of Assisi, St. Francis of Assisi, founded the order in the 13th century. And this was the common garb of the peasants in Italy of the 13th century. He was from a very wealthy family, gave it all up because he wanted to follow the gospel of Jesus Christ. As literal as he could. He had an experience early in life in war against his town of Assisi, against Perugia, and his side lost. And he ended up in prison, in a dungeon for almost 2 years. And in his recovery, he had an amazing spiritual experience. The life he was living was leading nowhere. And so he gave all up. He gave up all his wealth and dressed as a peasant to serve the poor and to follow the gospel as literally as he could, to try to imitate Christ as literally as he could, to the point where toward the end of his life he even ended up with, by meditating on the passion of Christ for so much, so deeply, that he seemed to have developed the marks of the wounds of Christ in his hands and feet and side. So he was almost the image of Christ when he died, a perfect model for someone who really wants to follow in the footsteps of Christ. Anyway, that's what I wanted to do as a boy, and I had dreams of becoming a monk and wearing a garb like his. And I had a visit to Old Mission Santa Barbara, and I walked into the sacred garden there, and there were Franciscans all over the place in this garden. And I thought, wow, that's what I want to be. So I ended up joining the Franciscans, but I had so much to learn. The first question that we're asked to discuss this morning is, how do you affirm your faith in this crazy modern world? And I took it very personally. How do I do it? I like to think that I do represent the Catholic Church, and we're full of doctrine and all kinds of rules and regulations and certain ways of worshiping, and I learned all of that and bought into it. This is what I wanted to do. But coming after many years as a priest, with lots of experience in different ways, I came to Huntington Beach, and I think it was through the Interfaith Council that I really began to wake up and realize that there's a lot out there besides the Catholic Church. And we have so much to learn. And I learned so much through this Interfaith Council and through the kind of things that you're doing. that we are all, and one of the things I learned, well, I knew it all the time theoretically, but it began to mean something to me, and that is that there is but one God, and that's the beauty of this morning's session. We have the three representatives, the three great monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. We all have this in common, that we believe in the one God, Lord of all, and we're made in his image. We are all his children. No matter who we are beloved by this God whom we all believe in, whether Muslim, Christian, or Jew, and we have so much to learn from each other. So I think from that standpoint, I'm grateful for coming to that interface to be ready to experience that. I shared one story, I didn't have time to go into it, but I'd love to share it with you sometime about a wonderful woman. But I have another story about a very dear friend.
No, you gotta tell the story.
This is the important thing about all religion. We've got to understand that we're all human beings. Each one of us is precious in the sight of God, loved as his own children. Whatever our color, racial background, and education, we're all children of God. Well, we had a wonderful example of that when this wonderful Mormon, Noble Waite, one of the early members of the Interfaith Council, became very sick, ended up in Hoag Hospital, had to have a blood transfusion. He was near death, and the word went out he needed blood, and we heard about it at the Interfaith Council. And one Jewish lady, well, many of us volunteered blood, but she had the exact type that he needed, so she gave him blood. Well, he recovered, and when he got back to the meeting, finally back to his health, he said, I want to thank all of you for your prayers. Really helped me through, but especially I want to, special thanks to Vicky, this Jewish lady, because her blood saved my life. But he says, the only trouble is, I'm not sure I could ever eat a ham sandwich again. Experiences like this, we need to know, realize that we are all brothers and sisters of one loving God. As to the second question, what does your faith teach, or what do you teach? I took it personally, what do you teach about nonviolence in this violent world that we're in? Well, I have a wonderful story that comes out of the Franciscan tradition. And without going over time, I think I can tell this story about St. Francis of Assisi, the founder. He grew up during the time of the Crusades, and once he had changed his life, was living as a poor follower of Jesus Christ. The Fifth Crusade was announced by the Pope, and a cardinal of the Catholic Church was the head named in charge of it. And he was raising money and troops from all over Europe to go and to forcibly take back some of the holy places that the Muslims had occupied in the Holy Land. And one of their big fortresses and camps was in Damietta, North Africa, actually present-day Egypt. And the Fifth Crusade was on its way, was laying siege to the fortress of Damietta. And Francis heard about this, and he forbade any of his followers to have anything to do with this crusade. Here he was standing up against the Pope and the whole Catholic Church. He said, this is not the way of Christ. The way of Christ is nonviolence. So he chose one of his brothers by the name of Illuminato, a wonderful name. But the enlightened one, how important that is to have the light of the Spirit, just as your faith teaches. He chose one of his brothers, his name was Illuminato, the two of them, without weapons, got on board ship, crossed the Mediterranean to North Africa, and went right in through the lines of the Muslims. They almost killed them. But they said, no, we have no weapons. We have no weapons. Just the two of us, we want to talk to the Sultan. And the Muslim warrior said, you're crazy, but if that's what you want, we'll take you. So they took him to Malik el-Kamil. He was the Sultan. And then he was a nephew of King Suleiman, famous Muslim leader. And he was defending the fortress of Damietta. And Francis was brought into his presence, and the two of them looked at each other, and they saw each other as enemies at first. But Francis said, "I've come with no weapons." And this impressed the Sultan. And he said, "Sit down and let's talk." And they talked. And they ended up praying together. And Francis discovered that this Sultan wanted peace. He was trying to stop the carnage. And Francis was deeply impressed, not only by his desire for peace, but his deep spirituality. And here was an example of dialogue back in the 13th century between two warring forces, a model for our own time. And they prayed together, and finally the Sultan said, I understand what you believe in. It's different from what I believe in, but I respect your belief, and I respect the fact that you came here without weapons. And he gave them orders to his troops to give them safe passage back to Italy. Francis came back not only impressed by the spirituality of the Sultan, but he also was moved by the spirit of prayer of the Muslims. And he urged his followers and the whole Catholic Church to stop during each day, like the Muslims do 5 times a day, and spend time praying to God each day, just as the Muslims did. So it had a powerful effect on Francis. What a model for our own life, to learn from each other. And that's what we're doing at the Interfaith Council. And this is why I was delighted to be invited to speak with people of a different faith, but we all share so much in common that we can be instruments of peace. And that's where the gift. And the more we can get to know each other and do things together for a common cause, just like Reverend Peggy is doing wonderful work worldwide on this whole compassion movement. And I must say, Reverend Peggy was instrumental in getting the city of Miami Beach to declare itself a city of compassion. This is real working for peace, where we look to the needs of people in our own community, start with peace right where we are now, and see if we can work for a peaceful community and to help each other to become a model for other cities and for other communities worldwide. If we continue this movement, maybe the people that want war are going to just end up with nobody leading a parade with nobody behind them. and that's what we need. So, thank you so much for this invitation to share a few things with you, and may God bless you in the wonderful work that you're doing.
To meet a few of my friends this morning, and I just want to thank you all for being here as well to hear what they have had to say. I think after hearing all of them, you can understand why this work is so important and why bringing it to you is also so important. They'll be hanging around for a little bit after the service if you have some questions for them. We gave them a book at the first service. We gave them each a copy of this thing called You by Ernest Holmes so that they can learn a little bit more about us. And I think the kids have a gift for you when they come in this morning as well.